Dr. Shane Retty.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, it's a pleasure to rise and talk to this bill. Clearly our discussions around ISDS, Mr Speaker, and ISDS provisions set ground rules that allow countries to do trade with each other. It's a procedural mechanism provided for international agreements on investments. Now, ISD provisions are really about making sure governments give fair and equitable and non-discriminatory treatment to investors. Mr Speaker, we include ISDS provisions in free trade agreements as fair and good citizens of the trading world, in the knowledge that New Zealand exporters also have the same courtesies and protections in foreign countries. We often forget that. Our offshore investments have the same protection. It's a balance, Mr Speaker. What is unbalanced is to take all the economic benefits of a free trade agreement, such as that we're going to get with Korea, and that's been the topic of discussion tonight, by way of example, the Korean FTA, and then not take the responsibilities of being a fair and reasonable trader. And that's what this bill would do, and that's the message that it would send. By way of example, with the Korean Free Trade Agreement, New Zealand First would rather us turn away $60 million of duties relief in the first year. New Zealand First would have us turn away benefits to kiwi fruit growers, beef, lamb and dairy products. Our kiwi fruit is competing against Chile, who at the moment have zero tariffs. And Mr Tabuteau talked about wanting a level playing field. Well, there's a level playing field right there. Give us equality with Chile on their zero tariffs, and we have exactly that level playing field that you're looking for. What is broken, Mr Speaker, is that this bill would not apply to any currently ratified agreements already in place, and that would create an inconsistency. And Mr Speaker, across our trading departments and this government, good government is about stability, not instability. Now, let's look a little bit further at some of the myths that Mr Tabuteau raised around ISDS, because there's actually many procedural safeguards in place. The allegation was made that maybe government sovereignty and policy making, and Mr Tabuteau raised the question of health and others have as well, could be compromised under ISDS agreements. Well, again, let's look at the Korean FTA with its ISDS and how health might be protected. Public health, for example, in the Korean FTA is held out in the first instance as it comes under the category of services supplied in the exercise of government authority. There's our sovereignty right there. We've already cut it out and said it doesn't apply. Furthermore, further policy space is preserved as reservations in the schedule of non-conforming measures. That's where health is protected as a social service for a public purpose. The third thing, Mr Speaker, is some of these reservations, however, can't be put aside under the terms of what's called fair and equitable treatment. Now, we should not be afraid of fair and equitable treatment. We are good international traders. And when we look at some of the definitions of fair and equitable treatment, because people raise this as a barrier to us, that's what's taken to court, the claims around fair and equitable treatment. Well, let's look at a couple of international case studies. Cargill versus Mexico. What is not fair and equitable and would bring a claim was, quote, grossly unfair, unjust or idiosyncratic treatment. Arbitrary beyond a merely inconsistent or questionable application, to grossly subvert a domestic law or policy for an ulterior motive. Bill Conn versus Canada, quote, conduct that is arbitrary, grossly unfair, unjust or idiosyncratic, is discriminatory and exposes the claimant to sectional or racial prejudice or involves a lack of due process. Mr Speaker, New Zealand's approach to fair and equitable treatment is as such. The treatment should amount to an outrage, to bad faith, to willful neglect of duty, or to an insufficiency of government action so far short of international standards that every reasonable and impartial person would readily recognise its insufficiency. We should have some assurity in that. Now, Mr Speaker, Mr Tabuteau also he presented one configuration of what an ISDS tribunal might look like. Can I just add some clarity to that? There are 3 appointed adjudicators. You get to choose one, and they get to choose one, and then you agree on the third. Not quite the configuration that Mr Tabuteau would have you believe, where he confabulated some concept out of his mind as to who might sit on that tribunal. Go back and have a look at what the Korean FTA has. Look at their tribunal. I have it right here. There's a number of safeguards. It's not in secret. It actually comes out, has to be reported, has to have consultation beforehand. It's a robust framework, not at all how Mr Tabuteau presented it. Mr Speaker, I think we should oppose this bill. Thank you.